The silence of the galaxy was almost unreal. The Emperor was dead, the Empire had fallen, and the Force seemed to have finally found a fragile balance. However, for Anakin Skywalker, now a Force ghost, there was no peace. He walked among the echoes of his own existence, feeling the weight of every decision he had made, every life he had destroyed. The cries of the innocent, Padmé's suffering, and Obi-Wan's disappointed gaze haunted him relentlessly. Could all of this have been avoided? He murmured, gazing up at the stars. But before he could sink back into his regrets, something different began to happen. A strange current of the Force crossed the void around him, enveloping him as if destiny itself were calling him. Anakin felt the fabric of reality stretch, something greater than himself, greater than all the Jedi and Sith combined. The light around him began to distort, and his ethereal body, once serene, was overcome by an irresistible force. "What is happening to me?" he thought, feeling the cosmic energy flow through his essence. There was no pain, but a deep calling, a silent command. The Force, like an ancient mother, guided him towards something he did not yet understand. When he opened his eyes, Anakin realized that the impossible had happened. He was no longer in the tranquil flow where the ghosts of the Force dwell, but in something different, tangible, alive. The heat of the sun beat down on his skin. The marble floor beneath his feet revealed a place he knew well, the Jedi Temple. He took a deep breath, confused by the feeling of having a body again. He looked at his hands, younger, firmer, and his heart raced. "This can't be real," he whispered, but the Force told him otherwise. It was not an illusion. He had returned. The first thing he heard were the distant echoes of the voices of the Padawans training in the halls. That sound, once so familiar, now seemed like an invitation to rewrite his own destiny. Anakin walked through the corridors, noticing details that Vader's armor had never allowed him to feel before. Every stone, every column, every stained glass window reflecting the sunlight. Everything seemed new, but at the same time a cruel reminder of what he had lost. He felt a tightness in his chest as he remembered that, on his original path, this temple would soon be bathed in blood. As he moved forward, images from the past flashed intensely. Obi-Wan's gaze when he defeated him on Mustafar, Padmé's scream, the metallic sound of his mechanical breathing. Guilt weighed heavily on him, but the Force seemed to whisper in his mind, offering him something different this time. "Choose, you must," echoed Yoda's voice in his memory, as if the Master himself were still talking to him. It was a reminder that, although fate had followed one path, choices could still reshape everything. Anakin stopped in front of a large window and gazed out at the immensity of Coruscant, alive and pulsating as he remembered it. The movement of ships in air traffic, the distant temples, the Senate rising in its glory, all intact. He felt the weight of knowing that this peace was temporary and that, if nothing was done, darkness would come again. "This time it will be different," he said softly. The Force seemed to respond, enveloping him in a sense of purpose, as if confirming that there was a mission waiting for him. However, a fear grew in his heart. If he was back, what did that mean for the others? Obi-Wan was still his master. Padmé was still alive. Palpatine still ruled with his facade of benevolent chancellor. All the pieces on the board were in the same position as before, but now he carried knowledge that no one else had. The temptation to simply save Padmé and confront the Sith immediately grew, but he knew that the easy path could lead him to the same ruin. He closed his eyes and tried to connect to the Force as he had in the days when he still believed in the Council. He felt the familiar presences of masters such as Yoda, Mace Windu, and Plo Koon, all alive, all still trusting him. A whirlwind of emotions hit him, and Anakin realized the weight of his responsibility. He was the bridge between two futures, the one he knew, marked by suffering, and the one that could still be shaped. But every decision he made from then on would change everything, and the line between saving and destroying had never been so thin. That was when a particularly painful memory flashed through his mind. The young people in the temple, their voices pleading as he betrayed them. The sound made him shudder, and his hands began to tremble. Never again, he whispered to himself, almost like an oath. I won't let that happen again. At that moment, the Force reacted, pulsing around him with greater intensity, as if approving his determination. It was a sign, a reminder that this time he had the chance to honor the title of Chosen One. Anakin began to move quickly through the corridors, but now with a different look, more conscious, more attentive. He observed every detail and every Jedi who passed by, noticing faces that, in his future, would no longer be there. Each one represented a life he could save, a destiny that could be altered. The mere thought brought an overwhelming internal conflict. How far could he interfere without compromising everything? The Force told him to act, but did not reveal how. His instinct guided him to the Jedi Council chamber, where decisions that shaped the galaxy were made. Each step toward that door brought contradictory memories. The moments of learning, Obi-Wan's scoldings, Yoda's wisdom, but also the mistrust, the limits imposed, the frustrations that pushed him to the dark side. This time, he knew he had to control his pride, for any slip could rekindle the flame that would turn him into Vader. Arriving at the door, Anakin stopped. He placed his hand on the panel, but did not enter. The weight of the moment was overwhelming. He knew that this was where it would all begin. The opportunity to alert the Council, to change the fate of the Jedi Order, perhaps even to save the Republic. But he also knew that one wrong word could destroy everything. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and sought guidance from the Force once more, sensing that this was only the beginning of a path far greater than he could imagine. Before entering, he looked back and observed the temple once more, as if engraving every detail of that reality in his mind. He knew that, even with all the power he had, he could not carry the future alone. He would need allies, trust, and, above all, control over himself. Anakin took a deep breath, trying to quiet his heart and prepare his mind for what was to come. The door opened, but he still did not take the first step. That moment would come later. The next step would begin with the Jedi Council. The Jedi Council chamber was plunged into silence when the door slowly opened. A cold wind swept through the hall, and all 12 masters felt the Force tremble. A translucent figure, enveloped in a bluish light, walked slowly to the center of the circle. Obi-Wan stood up immediately, his eyes wide. Anakin? But as he looked closer, he realized it was not the young Padawan he knew. This man was older, marked by invisible scars and a heavy gaze, like someone who had seen centuries of wars and regrets. Yoda leaned on his cane, his eyes half closed, as the Force pulsed around him. Strange, alive and not alive you are. Explain you must. Mace Windu rested his hand on his lightsaber, though he did not wield it, feeling the weight of that presence. Who, or what are you? He asked in a firm but controlled voice. The figure looked up, and the answer came laden with pain. I am what remains of Anakin Skywalker. A wave of murmurs swept through the room, and even Plo Koon leaned forward, trying to comprehend the impossible. I am the result of the path he will follow, if nothing changes. The words echoed in the hall, and the masters looked at each other with expressions of shock. Ki-Adi-Mundi ran his hand over his chin, intrigued. So you came from the future? Why? To warn us of what? Anakin took a deep breath and walked to the center of the room, his spectral form glowing in the light from the temple windows. The Force sent me here because a warrior will arise, a being so powerful that he will change the fate of the entire galaxy. He will be trained, molded, and he will turn against all of you, against everything the Jedi Order stands for. Silence fell over the council, and Yoda closed his eyes for a moment, diving into the Force. Dark the future is, but certain you are that it will come. Anakin nodded, his expression laden with unshakable certainty. If nothing is done, this warrior will become unstoppable. He will be a hunter of Jedi, a destroyer of worlds, someone who will drag the galaxy into a period of darkness. You have no idea what you will face. Mace Windu, rigid in his seat, crossed his arms. And who is this warrior? Tell us his name, Skywalker. We need to know who we are dealing with. For a moment, the ghost was silent. His gaze wandered around the room, finally resting on Obi-Wan, his face seeming to reflect centuries of pain. "He will be one of us," he replied slowly. "A Jedi trained here among you, someone who will believe he is fighting for peace, but will be consumed by something far greater than he can control." Obi-Wan frowned, his heart racing. "Are you saying that one of our own will turn against the Order?" Anakin raised his head and looked directly at all the masters. His deep voice echoed through the room like distant thunder. "He will not just be a Jedi. He will become something much worse. A Lord of the Dark Side. His name will be Darth Vader." The revelation stunned the council. Plo Koon exchanged an alarmed glance with Ki-Adi-Mundi. Yoda remained motionless, but his eyes revealed a weight that few could understand. Mace Windu broke the silence, his voice tense. "How do you know this name? Who told you?" Anakin's ghost closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering courage for the final answer. When he spoke, his voice was low, but each syllable carried a deep pain. "No one told me. I know. Because Darth Vader is me." The hall fell into absolute silence. None of the masters moved. Shock overwhelmed them all, and even the Force seemed to hold its breath. That revelation changed everything. The silence after the revelation was suffocating. The masters looked at each other, unable to form words. Anakin's specter remained in the center of the hall, motionless, staring into the void like someone who had already accepted his own fate. Finally, it was Mace Windu who broke the tension. "If this is true, if you are this Darth Vader, then everything we know is doomed." The ghost stared at him with a heavy gaze and replied, "It doesn't have to be that way. The Force brought me here so that history could be changed. But for that, you must listen and trust." Yoda took a deep breath, his eyes closed for a moment, letting himself be guided by the flow of the Force. "Difficult to trust is, but to lie I cannot sense in you." Ki-Adi-Mundi, however, shook his head in disbelief. "This could be a trick. The Force can be deceiving, especially when it comes from visions. What if it's a trap, a test? We cannot base the fate of the Jedi Order on the word of a ghost." The specter turned to him, his eyes burning with intensity. "I am not a vision. I am the result of your choices. Every doubt, every failure, every decision you make from this moment on will define who Darth Vader will become." Obi-Wan, who had been silent until then, took a step forward. His voice was low, but full of restrained emotion. "Anakin, if what you say is true, then the boy we know, the Anakin alive out there, is he destined to be lost?" The ghost looked away for a moment, as if it were difficult to face his former master. "He doesn't have to be lost, Obi-Wan. That's why I'm here. You still have a chance to save him, but it will take courage and vigilance." The mention of young Anakin made the tension between the masters almost unbearable. Plo Koon was direct, his voice muffled by the modulator in his mask. "Then we must watch the boy, prevent him from becoming too powerful, control him before it's too late." The ghost turned abruptly, and for the first time his voice echoed like thunder. "No, controlling him will only lead him faster to his downfall. That's how it all began. That's how I was destroyed." The masters exchanged alarmed glances, realizing that their old ways of dealing with the chosen ones might have been wrong. Yoda rested his staff on the ground and spoke in a grave tone. "Balance we must find. Force we cannot. Teach we must." Mace Windu crossed his arms, thoughtful, but unable to hide his distrust. "If we accept this as true, if this future really happens, then this young Anakin carries so much power that he will become a threat to the galaxy itself." The ghost nodded slowly, confirming, "Yes, he is the chosen one, but what you do not understand is that his power has no limits. That is what makes him the greatest of the Jedi, or the most dangerous of the Sith. The line between these two realities is much thinner than you imagine." Ki-Adi-Mundi pressed his lips together and leaned forward. "So what do you propose, Ghost? What should we do? Train the boy differently? Change our methods because of a vision of destruction?" Anakin's gaze turned directly to Yoda, as if seeking in him the understanding that had always been lacking in the past. It's not just about training differently. It's about teaching what the Order refused to teach. Emotions, fear, love. All of this needs to be understood, not controlled, not suppressed. Denying that is what led to our ruin. Obi-Wan lowered his gaze, absorbing the words with deep weight. He knew Anakin better than anyone and knew that part of that pain came from the Council itself. If we try to change that, if we try to guide the young in another way, aren't we meddling too much in what the Force has determined? The ghost stared at him, his voice firm. The Force determines nothing, Master. It shows paths. Who chooses them? That is up to us. The room fell into a new silence, this time more reflective than tense. Plo Koon broke the silence with a sense of urgency. If we accept your words, then every decision from here on out must be precise. One wrong step and we may be responsible for creating this Darth Vader. The ghost nodded. Exactly. Every word, every teaching, every judgment. Everything can alter destiny. You have in your hands the chance to save thousands or condemn them. Mace Windu looked at the others, his expression closed, and declared, "We can no longer ignore this. We must decide what to do with young Anakin now." Yoda raised his eyes, his voice lower than ever, but laden with meaning. Difficult path this is. Careful we must be. Choices shape the future, they do. The ghost stepped forward, facing each master one by one, and said firmly, "The young man needs you. He needs guidance, not chains. If you try to mold him through fear, if you try to restrain him, you will lose him." An invisible weight seemed to fall on everyone in the hall. At that moment, Obi-Wan looked up and asked the question no one had dared to ask yet. "What if we fail?" The ghost took a deep breath and replied, with a cold and resigned expression, "If you fail, Darth Vader will be born. And when that happens, none of you will survive." The force of those words filled the room with absolute silence, and all the masters understood that nothing would ever be the same again. The Jedi Council chamber remained immersed in heavy silence after Anakin's ghost's latest revelation. The masters were still absorbing what they had heard, but Yoda broke the silence, tapping his cane gently on the floor. "Decide we must. Action we need to take. Waste time we cannot." Mace Windu crossed his arms, his eyes fixed on the specter. "If this future is as inevitable as you say, we must act now. Every second we let pass may bring us closer to the birth of Darth Vader." The other masters nodded slowly, though fear was evident on some of their faces. Obi-Wan stood up, his expression heavy with concern. "If we try to change Anakin's training abruptly, he will notice. I know my apprentice, and any sign of mistrust could drive him away from us." The ghost looked directly at him, his voice deep and calm. "It's not about driving him away, Obi-Wan. It's about gaining his trust, something you never achieved. He needs to feel that he can share his doubts and fears without being judged." Plo Koon, adjusting his mask, agreed with a slight nod. "If repression will lead to his downfall, then perhaps we need to rethink everything we believe about training." Mundi interjected, his gaze serious and concerned. "But if we change the training too much, we risk weakening him. We cannot leave him without discipline, or it will be equally dangerous. We must find a balance, a method that strengthens him without pushing him to the dark side." Yoda closed his eyes, letting the Force guide him. "Difficult the path of the chosen one is, but care for him we must. Understanding we must give him. Deny, we cannot, what he feels." The ghost smiled bitterly, remembering everything he had lived through. "If they had listened to me in my time, many lives could have been saved." Mace Windu frowned, staring directly at the specter. "If this is our chance to change the future, we need clearer answers. What exactly do we need to prevent?" Anakin remained silent for a moment, as if the Force itself resisted revealing more than it should. "It is not a specific act, Mace. It is not a single decision. It's hundreds, maybe thousands of small choices that lead to the same point. It all starts with fear. If they don't take care of his fear, it will be the end. Obi-Wan looked away, his expression tense, for he knew better than anyone that young Anakin was hiding an emotional burden he rarely shared. Plo Koon then suggested something unexpected. Perhaps we should create an observation group, not to control but to guide. Masters who will accompany him closely, who understand his difficulties and offer support. If we leave him alone, the Force may lead him down paths we cannot predict. Ki-Adi-Mundi agreed, but pondered. This must be done with care. If he suspects surveillance, we will lose any chance of gaining his trust. Yoda looked at the Spectre and said in a firm tone, "No, he cannot. The future. Too alert, he must not be." Anakin's ghost nodded slowly. "I agree. Don't tell him anything about me or about Vader. That would only destroy him faster. Just change the path with small steps. Train him to understand the Force beyond the rules of the Order. Teach him to connect with his emotions without letting them consume him. Do that, and there may still be hope." Mace Windu exhaled, visibly uncomfortable with the idea of altering traditional methods, breaking with centuries of Order teachings. That is a dangerous path. Yoda replied without hesitation. Dangerous, the path is, but more dangerous not acting will be. At that moment, Obi-Wan intervened again, his voice firm but with a personal tone. "If we are to follow this path, I ask that you let me lead the training. He trusts me more than anyone else. I can reach him in a way that others cannot." The Spectre looked at his former master with an expression that mixed pride and pain. "Obi-Wan, you were like a brother to me. If anyone can guide him, it's you. But you'll need to do something you've never done before. Listen to him. He doesn't just need a master. He needs someone who understands him." Ki-Adi-Mundi, still suspicious, looked at the other masters. What if it fails? What if, despite everything, he still becomes that Vader? The ghost turned to him, and for the first time his voice echoed with overwhelming intensity. "If you fail, there will be no second chance. The Jedi Order will be destroyed. The masters in this room, all of you, will cease to exist." A chill ran through each of those present, and no one dared to contest his words. Plo Koon broke the silence, looking directly at Yoda. "So, it is decided? We will alter the training." The old master opened his eyes slowly and spoke calmly. "Decide we must, but together we must act. Secrets we must hide. Uniting the Order priority is." Mace Windu nodded reluctantly, but without opposition. "So be it. We will create a plan, but we will keep it between us. No one beyond this council may know." Anakin looked around, studying each of the masters' faces. "There is still hope. The Force brought you to me and brought me here for a reason. Don't make the same mistakes. Do what I didn't do." The light around the ghost began to vibrate softly, as if the Force was reacting to the newly formed union between them. "You can still save the Chosen One. And by saving him, you will save the entire galaxy." Yoda looked up and ended the meeting with a single sentence. "Difficult path this will be, but together we must walk." The masters nodded, aware that nothing would be the same as before. However, none of them realized that by altering destiny, they were creating an even more uncertain future. Anakin's ghost remained in the center, watching them silently, feeling the weight of each choice about to be made. The years following Anakin's warning brought profound changes. The young knight was trained differently, learning to understand his emotions instead of repressing them. Obi-Wan remained close, guiding him patiently, while Yoda offered teachings on balance and inner control. The Jedi Council began to revise its old methods, creating a more conscious order, where feelings were no longer seen as weakness. With each passing day, Anakin grew stronger, wiser, and more connected to the Force. The Force flowed through him with unusual intensity. His abilities grew at an impressive rate, and his intuition reached extraordinary levels. There were no signs of internal conflict or nightmares, for from the beginning, his path had been guided with clarity and direction. Anakin was prepared, but he did not yet know how much. The ghost who had warned him about the future watched silently from a distance, seeing each choice shape a completely different destiny. This time, balance seemed possible. His nightmares about Padme never happened. It was during a mission on Coruscant that everything changed. Anakin was summoned by Palpatine in private. The Chancellor, who had always been a friend and advisor, closed the doors to his chambers and revealed a cold smile. "Anakin, the time has come to know the truth." The young Jedi frowned, confused, as he felt intense pressure in the Force. "What truth?" he asked, instinctively reaching for his lightsaber. Palpatine raised his head and, with a dark look, replied, "I am a Sith Lord, and you will be my ally or my ruin." For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy as a storm about to break. Anakin activated his blue lightsaber, the sound echoing through the hall. "So it is you, responsible for manipulating the galaxy from the shadows." Palpatine raised his hands and his red lightsaber lit up, illuminating his yellow eyes. "Don't fight the inevitable, boy. At my side, you will have unlimited power, control over your own destiny." But Anakin did not yield. His eyes were steady, his mind clear. "My destiny is not to be your weapon, and today, it ends." The battle began in an instant. Force bolts exploded in the air, deflected by the blue blades spinning at high speed. Anakin advanced with precision, each strike reflecting years of disciplined training and absolute focus. Palpatine counterattacked fiercely, but quickly realized that the boy before him was no longer the impulsive apprentice he had hoped to manipulate. The Force seemed to flow through Anakin with frightening intensity, guiding his movements as if destiny itself were at his side. Palpatine tried to seduce him with words between attacks. "You don't understand what you're rejecting, Skywalker. The Council fears your power. With me, you would be free." Anakin dodged a blow and replied coldly, "Freedom does not come from serving the dark side." A quick spin, a calculated advance, and a powerful blow broke through Palpatine's defense, forcing him to retreat. For the first time, the Sith showed tension. He realized that the young Jedi had more control over the Force than anyone before him. The fight intensified, the blades exchanging blows so fast that the sound mingled with the thunder outside. The hall was lit by blue and red reflections, while shards of energy ricocheted off the walls. At a decisive moment, Palpatine unleashed a storm of Force lightning, but Anakin raised his saber and absorbed the impact, masterfully channeling the energy. In a swift movement, he deflected part of the discharge back at the Sith himself, who staggered backward, surprised by the boy's strength. "Finish it, Anakin," Palpatine shouted, falling to his knees, his face marked by rage. "Use that power. Take your rightful place." Anakin approached, his lightsaber still lit, his eyes fixed on his enemy. "I don't need the dark side to be strong." With a single precise blow, he disarmed Palpatine and then advanced, piercing his chest. The Sith's body fell to the ground, lifeless, and the echo of his defeat resonated through the Force like the end of an era. When it was all over, Anakin stood in silence, breathing calmly. He felt the Force vibrating in harmony around him. He had not only defeated Palpatine, he had broken the invisible chains that would have led him to Vader's dark destiny. Now, the path of the Chosen One was clear, and balance was closer than ever. The greatest threat to the galaxy had been destroyed, and the Jedi Order would have a new chance to rebuild its role. With the fall of the Sith, the Jedi Council met and implemented profound changes in the Order. The training of future knights now emphasized not only discipline, but emotional understanding and full connection with the Force. Obi-Wan, Plo Koon, and Ki-Adi-Mundi led reforms, while Yoda guided everyone on how compassion could strengthen the Jedi rather than weaken them. Anakin became a living example that the power of the Chosen One could only flourish when mind, body, and heart were in balance. Months later, on Naboo, Padme gave birth to Luke and Leia in complete safety. Anakin was by her side throughout the process, feeling the Force flow through his children as a promise of a better future. Padme survived and, alongside Anakin, was able to raise a family far from the shadow that had once threatened to destroy them. The Republic regained stability, the Jedi Order was renewed, and the galaxy, for the first time in decades, breathed peace. Anakin's ghost, who had once come to change the course of history, watched everything from afar. He knew his mission was complete. By altering each critical choice, he had finally freed the young man he once was. The cycle was broken, and the future now belonged to a galaxy where the dark side would not reign. A destiny of hope had replaced one of ruin.